Parodius is a series of shoot-'em-up games developed and published by Konami. The series is a parody of Konami's other game series, Gradius, which is where the series' name is derived from, combining parody and Gradius. The Parodius series was never released in North America and had limited releases in Europe. The game, however, had multiple entries to the series in Japan. After the game's release of Paro Wars in 1997, the series would become a theme for slot machines and pachinko, and would never really return to a console. In this video, we'll be focusing on the first 3 releases in this series. Many of the Parodius games feature similar gameplay themes throughout the entire series. The enemies in the game are shared between all the games, including penguins, Easter Island heads, large women as bosses, and various nods to Japanese mythology and culture. In each of the Parodius games, the games feature a power-up bar taken directly from the Gradius series. The power-up level is raised by picking up red power-up pods, and the shape of the pod varies depending on which game you're playing and which character you're playing as. The power-ups you're able to redeem on the power-up bar include homing missiles, double shot, boomerang, spread guns, shields, among others. Aside from the power-up bar, another type of power-up used in the game are bells. These are borrowed from the Twin series from Konami, and will give you temporary power-ups. When an enemy drops a bell, you're able to shoot it a number of times to change its color. The color of the bell determines what type of power-up you'll receive. The most common of the bells is the yellow bell, which simply gives you points. White bells will give you a megaphone, which you blast a sentence in Japanese at enemies doing damage to them. The green bell enlarges your character, making you invincible for a short period of time. The purple bell converts all the enemies into bells and power-up pods. The red bell gives you a power-up where it sends a mini version of your character to shoot out a kaiku beam, which is a vertical beam that does damage to anything that touches it. And lastly, the blue bell causes a large explosion that kills all the enemies on the screen. The first game to be released in the Parodius series is Parodius, Taku wa Chikyu Osuku, or Parodius, The Octopus Saves the Earth. This title would be initially released for the MSX computer in 1988, 3 years after Gradius and Twin B released in the arcades. The game runs choppy, which is kind of expected for a computer that came out in 1983. As you move forward, the game seems to chug along 1 frame at a time. Despite the slow speed of the game, it's actually among the more difficult entries into the Parodius series. The game also has extremely simple graphics that can definitely predate anything on the NES. The game actually strongly differs graphically from many of the other later Parodius titles, having far less colorful visuals due to the MSX's limited color palette. The game introduces 5 main characters that would be seen in most of the later Parodius games, most notably the octopus named Takosuke, which will become the main character in many of the series, as well as Pintaro the penguin, Goemon from the Gonberry Goemon series, Popolan, a knight from the MSX game Nightmare, as well as Vic Viper, the spaceship from Gradius. Each character has their own power-up set. One of the cooler parts of this game is hearing the general instrument AY3-8910 sound chip, which is a 3-voice sound generator that was shared between a number of early consoles including the Vectrex, ZX Spectrum, Intellivision, and the MSX computer. Aside from emulation or actually playing this game on an MSX, the easiest way to give this game a try is on the Konami Antiques MSX Collection Volume 3 for the PlayStation 1, which includes the MSX version of the game. An updated version of the game was also included in the Parodius Collection on the PSP, which improves on the game's choppiness. Although, truth be told, pretty much every Parodius game released after Parodius The Octopus Saves the Earth is a better game, so you can pretty safely skip this game and not miss much. 2 years after the release of the original MSX Parodius, the series would have its initial release in the arcades of Japan on April 25th of 1990, with the release of Parodius Da, Shinwa Kara Oarai, or It's Parodius, From Myth to Laughter. The title is a play on Gradius 3's title, From Legend to Myth. From Myth to Laughter's plot has you saving the Earth from a giant octopus which is threatening the Earth. The arcade version of this game is a massive step up from the original MSX entry into the series with vastly superior graphics and gameplay. The choppiness is completely gone, as well as 2 of the playable characters, unfortunately. In From Myth to Laughter, you take control of either Vic Viper, which uses the standard Gradius power-up configuration, the Octopus, which uses weapons similar to Life Force, Twin B, which has attacks similar to the game Twin B, including a rocket punch that has a larger impact area than the standard missiles, and lastly, Pintaro the penguin, which has attacks similar to Gradius 2, allowing you to fire ripple lasers at enemies. Preceding the arcade release of From Myth to Laughter, the game was ported to a massive number of consoles, including the Famicom, Super Famicom, PC Engine, the X69000, and the Game Boy, among other consoles. This was one of the few Parodius games that would also be released in Europe as well on the PAL NES. The Famicom version lacks graphically when compared to the arcade version, but is actually still a really strong and nice looking shoot 'em up when compared to other titles on the console. Unfortunately, the game does experience massive slowdown when there are too many things on the screen. The Famicom port also contains some censorship regarding an outfit that a boss wears. The Super Famicom version is fairly similar to the arcade version, however runs at a slightly lower resolution. Parodius, from Myth to Laughter, is actually a really great starting off point for the Parodius series, as it has many of the staples and gameplay seen in later games. It's a fun and accessible shoot 'em up that you should be able to play as long as you have an import console from the early 90s, or an emulator. A great way to check out the arcade version of this game is with the Gokujo Parodius Da Deluxe Pack for the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. This pack includes both arcade versions of Parodius Da and Fantastic Parodius. My copy was actually sent to me by Jimmy Hoppa of Import Gaming for the Win, and if you'd like to check out some more import retro gaming videos, check out his channel. Following Parodius from Myth to Laughter, Gokujo Parodius, Kano no Iko o Monomite, or Fantastic Parodius, Pursue the Glory of the Past, was released in arcades on April 26th of 1994. Unlike the previous game, the only home ports seen for this game would be released on the Super Famicom, at least until the Deluxe Pack came out on the PlayStation and Saturn. This Parodius game is extremely similar to Myth from Laughter, featuring some of the same bosses and levels. It features less levels than the original arcade game, featuring only 7 stages rather than 10. This level set feels way easier than any of the previous games and shouldn't give anyone much difficulty in beating the game. Well, as long as you have enough quarters, that is. The game did have an English translation that was released in arcades and was called Parodius: The Fantastic Journey. Fantastic Parodius introduced a number of new characters to the game, including Hikaru the Showgirl, Mambo the Fish, Michael the Pig, and Koitsu the Stick Figure. As with previous entries into the series, each character has their own set of power-ups. The game also adds in some new bell power-ups, including the megaphone from the White Bell, which allows you to shout words at enemies to kill them. Fantastic Parodius also has some really interesting bosses. For instance, there's one that shoots power-ups at you as its attack. Overall, of the first 3 entries into the Parodius series, Fantastic Parodius plays the best and has the most interesting bosses and levels. It's also very accessible to play in the Gokujo Parodius Da Deluxe Pack. The Gokujo Parodius Da Deluxe Pack sits at about $25 to $30 on eBay for both the Sega Saturn and PlayStation 1. The price is pretty fair for getting 2 of my favorite shoot 'em up games in one package. Parodius is an interesting series that unfortunately never made it to North America. The bright, colorful visuals and less hardcore shoot 'em up gameplay makes the games amazing. The arcade gameplay also makes the games extremely easy to play and understand without speaking or reading any Japanese, so for Westerners that want an extremely fun shooting game, this is a great import to look into.